Brazil, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva defended the country's democracy and sovereignty amid ongoing U.S. threats to its economy and justice system. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Esmail Bargheh rejects the new package of sanctions imposed by the U.S. Treasury Department against the nation. And in Palestine, at least 20 people were killed in a new airstrike carried out by the Israeli occupation forces in the southern Gaza Strip. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de Santos. I'm from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. We now begin with the information. In Brazil, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva defended the country's democracy and sovereignty amid ongoing threats to its economy and justice system by the U.S. government. Through a social media post, Lula addressed U.S. President Trump's statements referring to the Brazilian administration as an unusual and extraordinary threat, criticizing the process against former President Jair Bolsonaro. The allegations served as an excuse to impose sanctions on Supreme Court Judge Alexandre de Moraes and a 50% tax on Brazilian exports. In this regard, Lula reiterated the respect for the independence of the judiciary and denied Moraes is being a target of sanctions motivated by the actions of Brazilian politicians who betray the country and its people in defense of their own interests.
I'm leaving here in a hurry because I'm heading to a meeting to defend another kind of sovereignty, the sovereignty of the Brazilian people in response to the measures announced by the President of the United States. So today for me is a sacred day of sovereignty.
And we go now to Ecuador as President Daniel Noboa presented a fourth urgent economic bill, according to the Executive for the Control of Irregular Capital Flows. More details in the following report.
The
Ecuadorian National Assembly received a new bill on urgent economic matters. This document proposes to prevent, detect and control irregular financial movements, but it also provides for the implementation of tax reforms, among them that companies will have to pay a 12% tax on the amount distributed. According to several experts, this is nothing more than a facade by the executive to obtain more revenue in view of the president's family company's failure to pay taxes.
It is not a matter of creating more taxes, of changing the rules of the game, but simply of correcting tax evasion. In my point of view, it would be optimal not to create more taxes, to raise them, but simply to do the tax functions well. It is not a matter of simply cutting ministries, cutting public servants, but of being efficient in spending.
He questioned how to control irregular funds and establish new tax rules. One of the viable alternatives he presented was to charge the large companies that owe exorbitant amounts to the country, as well as to eliminate interest remissions. By collecting the debt, the Noboa Group could even have avoided layoffs in the public sector.
The amount corresponding to interest and fines totals almost $66 million. Just to put in context, the executive decree that foresees the report of 5,000 civil servants and the cut of 41% of the entities would represent for the country an interest saving between $60 million and $120 million.
However, prior to the executive's announcements, $76.2 million of the debt held by the banana exporter Noboa disappeared in the Internal Revenue Service system. Now it owes around $21 million. This has generated strong criticism, starting because there is no pronouncement as to why this change was made. The analysts consulted define the action as irregular.
While this is happening, jobs are being cut, health care is not being taken care of. It is practically a step backwards, practically to a parallel regime without rights. It is misused by the executive for the benefit of complying with the introduction of these regulations.
According to analysts, the executive's new project is part of a discourse promoted by Daniel Noboa, whose objective would be to cover up the tax debts of privileged sectors, transferring the tax burden to the people.
Society cannot bear so much aggression at all levels of life. We have no security. We have no health. We have no education. We have no work. So, what do we do is the question.
Meanwhile, what for now is a fact is that the project, which the executive has entitled Law of Foundations, must be approved, modified or denied in a period of 30 days by the legislature. This, while the Noboa family continues to count among the companies that owe the most taxes in Ecuador.
Gabriela Mena, teleSUR Ecuador.
We continue now with other topics. Argentinian retirees mobilized on Wednesday in Buenos Aires to demand the government of Javier Milei an increase in their pensions and policies for access to medicines. The demonstration comes amid Javier Milei's imminent veto of a law recently passed by Parliament ordering an increase in the measure of pensions received by thousands of senior citizens. The mobilization took place in front of the National Congress and surrounded by a strong operative by security forces and a new repression, resulting in 5 people that were arrested and several that were injured. The police reportedly used anti-riot dispersal means, including pepper spray and rubber bullets. There are some 7.4 million retirees in Argentina, representing 15.7% of the country's total population. Also in Argentina, social and environmental organizations in Chubut province are preparing a demonstration following the provincial government's decision to impose polluting mega mining projects. The organizations are preparing a letter to send to Governor Ignacio Torres next Monday, August 4th, while throughout the provincial territory multiple events and mobilizations are occurring. This after the governor expressed his intention to carry out the exploitation of uranium deposits in the central plateau of the province. However, the project does not have a social license. Already in 2003, the inhabitants of Esquel managed to stop and open pit gold exploitation projects in the Andes Mountains, setting a precedent in the fight against polluting mega mining in the region. And this Wednesday marked the 50th anniversary of a massacre of university students in El Salvador. The university community and social organizations marched to remember the victims and demand justice, but also to demand that the government of Nayib Bukele stop the persecution. Our correspondent in San Salvador, Roberto Hugo Presa, with the details.
On July 30, 1975, hundreds of university students and professors from the University of El Salvador marched down the street where hundreds of university students and professors marched. They were repressed with rifle and tank fire by the extinct National Guard. 50 years later, they took to the streets to pay tribute to them.
For us students, it is a very noble feeling to go out to march and to commemorate those who were massacred and the martyrs of July 30th, 1975 inches.
For me, as the daughter of a survivor who had to throw herself from this place, from this overpass to save her life, for me it is an honor to be here again raising our voice, just as they did 50 years ago in defense of the University of El Salvador, in defense of the right to higher education, in defense of the right to health, in defense of the communities.
The university community, as every year, once again demanded justice. Since 50 years after the bloody repression, the murderers remain unpunished.
Half a century has passed without the Salvadoran state being able to find the truth and find justice. For a mother, a father, a son, a daughter, a brother, a sister who just wants to know the truth.
In front of the memorial to the victims, the students burned a figure representing the tyranny of the United States. According to declassified documents, the military counted on the criminal complicity of United States advisors.
And the unfortunate thing about all this is that when we learn about the Central Intelligence Agency declassified documents, we learn that everything that happened at least with the permission of the United States government. That's unfortunate, because they saw science, education and human rights, education and also university autonomy, as the enemy to be defeated.
Simultaneously, social organizations also marched to condemn the repression of the military governments and to denounce the current repression.
We have already had almost 4 years of a regime of exception in which the exercise of fundamental rights has been restricted in a generalized manner, including the exercise of freedom of expression, the right to the inviolability of the home, among other fundamental rights that are being restricted. There have been thousands of arbitrary arrests.
The activities of this half-century of the university students' massacre were held under the slogan "Memory unites us and justice commits us" and symbolizes a cry for justice and truth.
Roberto Hugo Presa, teleSUR, El Salvador.
Now I have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates and much more. We'll be right back, stay with us. Welcome back from the South. The United States Treasury Department imposed a new package of sanctions against Iran on Wednesday, affecting dozens of individual companies and vessels linked to an international shipping network. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent reported that the package consists of more than 115 sanctions imposed today, the most broad since the Trump administration launched its maximum pressure campaign on Iran. In addition, the Assistant U.S. Treasury Secretary Michael Faulkner stated that the objective of this measure is to limit Tehran's main source of revenue, pressure the government to end its nuclear program, and reduce its ballistic missile program. And in a statement, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Esmail Baghaei issued a strong rebuke following the new United States sanctions against Iran. According to the official, the true aim behind the sanctions is to cripple Iran's development. Baghaei also called to the move a clear reflection of the hostility of the United States policymakers towards the Iranian people. The spokesman also pointed to the United States throwing unprecedented support behind the Israeli regime's provoked war on the Islamic Republic last month. Baghaei finally underlined the nation's unshakable resolve to pursue its lofty goals to protect national sovereignty despite Washington's provocations. We continue going over the situation in Palestine as at least 20 people were killed in a new airstrike carried out by the Israeli occupation forces in the southern Gaza Strip. According to local media, most of the civilians were killed when Israeli soldiers attacked citizens gathering near an aid distribution point in the south of the Wadi area in the center of the Palestinian enclave. Medical sources added that following the incident of the last 24 hours, the number of aid seekers killed has risen to 1,239, with more than 8,152 wounded reported to date. In their genocidal offensive against the Gaza people, the Israeli occupation forces have caused the martyrdom of more than 60,000 citizens since October of 2023. And the Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem denounced that the actions committed by the administration of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu constitute genocide against the Palestinian community in Gaza and risk spreading to other occupied territories. B'Tselem's reports present an in-depth analysis of Israeli policies and statements by senior officials that point to the deliberate destruction of the Palestinian society in Gaza. Another organization that spoke out on the matter is Physicians for Human Rights, which affirmed that Israel has displaced 9 out of every 10 Gazans, destroyed or damaged 92% of homes, and left more than 500,000 children without schools and stability. The organizations emphasized that even if the military offensive cesarean, death from malnutrition, infections, or chronic diseases would continue for years. The United States Senate blocks resolution to stop the sale of arms to Israel amid increasing opposition to the genocide in Gaza. On Wednesday, Senator Bernie Sanders presented a resolution to block the sale of 20,000 rifles and halt a $675 million shipment of bombs, which was rejected by the Senate with all Republican votes against it. This comes amid growing discontent of U.S. citizens regarding the genocide and starvation of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, showing a widening split in what had been traditionally an overwhelming support for Israel in U.S. politics. The resolutions are the closest the U.S. Senate has come to limiting arms shipments to Israel so far. And Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney announced on Wednesday the country would recognize the state of Palestine next September.
The reasons I cited earlier, Canada intends to recognize the state of Palestine at the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly in September 2025. This intention is predicated on the Palestinian Authority's commitment to much-needed reforms, including commitments by the Palestinian Authority's President Abbas to fundamentally reform its governance, to hold general elections in 2026.
And moving on to other topics, on Thursday, Ethiopia will launch the 7th year of its Green Legacy initiative by planting 700 million trees in a single day. Since 6 a.m. local time, millions of people nationwide have been urged to take part. According to Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, these demonstrate the strength, unity, and determination of the population. The initiative is crucial if the country is to achieve its goal of planting 7.5 billion trees during the current rainy season from June to September. Since its launch in 2019, Green Legacy has facilitated the planting of over 40 billion trees nationwide. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverages, and much more. Follow our page and activate notifications to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. We continue with new information following the earthquake that shook the far east of Russia. A tsunami warning has been issued in the countries bordering the Pacific Ocean. More details in the following report.
A magnitude 8.8 earthquake, one of the strongest since 1952, struck a peninsula in the far east of Russia, causing tsunami waves up to 4 meters high along its coastline, resulting in massive damage and evacuations. The tsunami spread to Japan, where authorities evacuated more than 2 million people to the north of the country. Shortly after, it reached the island of Hawaii and the west coast of the United States, with waves up to 1.09 meters high, and warnings were issued for dangerous currents and waves. The maritime event is approaching several Latin American countries. In this regard, Peruvian authorities reported the closure of the green coast of Lima, while some areas of Colombia were among the first localities to alert the population. Also, Chile mobilizes to evacuate coastal areas before the arrival of the tsunami, and Ecuador forecasts waves of up to 1.4 meters in the Galapagos Islands.
And in Venezuela, the artistic gala celebrating the 20 years of teleSUR was held at the Municipal Theater in Caracas. Various groups and authorities attended the event, which featured the participation of international artistic groups and cultural figures from Cuba, Brazil, Bolivia. The artistic gala also featured the National System of Youth and Children's Orchestras and Choirs of Venezuela. The event was directed by Rolando Almirante, a Cuban artistic producer, and also attended by the Minister of Culture of Venezuela, Ernesto Villegas, the President of teleSUR, Patricia Villegas, and the workers as well. In addition to celebrating the 20th anniversary of the multi-platform, this event also embraced the People's Summit for Peace and Against War. The gala's opening speech was delivered by Venezuela's Vice President, Delcy Rodriguez, who highlighted the role of teleSUR in spreading around the world the truth of the peoples of the Global South.
Anyone who tune into teleSUR TV or to its technological platforms of social networks is connecting with the truth, is connecting with reality, is connecting with a morality completely contrary to that of the transnational communications corporations.
And in her gala's closing speech, teleSUR President Patricia Villegas highlighted the road walked by the multi-platform along the 20 years of the platform's life and affirmed that it was a day to say that it was always necessary for a new world to be born.
It's 20 years of stories, 20 years of struggles, 20 years of telling what happens to us with conviction, with strength, with faith. Today is a day to say thank you. Today is a day to honor the nobodies of our land. Today is a day to honor the governments that represent us and the struggles that they call us to. Today is a day to say that it is always necessary for a new world to be born.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. And now to close our new broadcast, let's listen to part of the performance of the song Kitipa of Mujer Tambor during the gala for the 20th anniversary of our multi-platform. For teleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.